Hey guys, SGT here, and I couldn't be more excited to have on the line Pastor Lindsey Williams. Pastor Williams is the author of 6 books, 2 of which have become bestsellers, one of which is called The Energy Non-Crisis, which lays out the very strong argument that oil is abiotic. Lindsey has been a Baptist minister for 55 years, and he was invited to be the chaplain to the elite of the world for 3 years during the construction of the Trans-Alaskan Oil Pipeline. Pastor Williams, on behalf of the entire audience, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, Sean, first of all, let me say it's a privilege to be on your show, I believe for the first time today. So thank you very much.
So, Pastor Williams, for those of us in the audience who are not familiar with you, can you tell us how you became the chaplain to the elite of the world?
The way it all came about was the providence of God. I actually had been a pastor of a church in Hollywood, Florida for 12 years. And the Lord called me to go to Alaska as a missionary when they said they were going to build the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. They said 25,000 workers would converge on the state of Alaska to build that 800-mile, 4-foot diameter pipe across the state of Alaska from America's oil field up on the Arctic Ocean. And 25,000 of the roughest, toughest, cussingest, drinkingest, orneriest folks on the face of the earth. I thought, well, they must need some spiritual guidance. So I went to Alaska Pipeline Service Company. That was a consortium of 9 major oil companies that were going to build that pipeline. And I said, don't you need a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline? I guess it worked because I kept going back and back and back, and finally persistence paid off. And they said, okay, you just go up to Prudhoe Bay and see what you can do. Well, I did. I'm quite sure they thought I'd last a matter of days. Instead, 6 months later, I was still there, and they said, we would like to invite you to sit in on our board meetings in an advisory capacity to help the relationship between management and labor. Sean, I had not the slightest idea what I was getting into, and for 3 years' time, I sat across the dinner table from, lived in the same dorms with, sat in the board meetings with the people that you hear about in the World Bank and the IMF. And the top oil company officials of the world. And let me be very honest with your audience today, Sean, and that is, I believe that God put me in that position many years ago so that I could be on your program today. It's only because of knowing the elite. Everything I get comes from the elite. The elite themselves who sat and planned all of this behind closed doors. There are 2 of those individuals that became very personal friends of mine, and over these past 35 years, they have told me things, and I have merely gone on radio talk shows and shows like yours and relayed what I have heard. And Sean, what I have heard startles me to no end of what the elite are planning on doing, Sean.
Pastor Williams, we know that you've been traveling for the last 3 weeks, so you probably have a lot of news to share. Jim Sinclair is saying that there is no fixing what's happening now. The problem is here. The problem is now. It's not tomorrow. It's right as we're talking. It's right as you're listening that this has come to a head, and it can explode. Sir, in the past, you've said that your sources have told you that the euro will collapse before the dollar, and when it does, folks will have just a couple of weeks to get out of all paper assets, because then the dollar will fall next. So we have so much to talk about.
Well, let me begin by what one of these elites said to me. Now, my book, Energy Non-Crisis, there's a person in the Energy Non-Crisis called Mr. X. It's actually a combination of 2 individuals. There were 2 of them who, over these past 35 years, have kept in touch with me on a regular basis. One of these individuals passed away. He was 88 years of age, if I remember correctly.
That was Mr. Fromm, correct? Mr. Fromm?
Yes, that's Mr. Fromm. We can actually use his name now. Many people wondered for years. Let me begin by what this gentleman told me just before he passed away. We were on the phone one day, and he said, Chaplain Williams, I'm too old to care. He said, it really doesn't matter anymore. He said, just go ahead and tell the world everything. Well, Sean, I've done exactly that. I've talked about things that these people have told me that have never been talked about before. Oh, by the way, the second Mr. X of my book, Energy Non-Crisis, this gentleman is still alive. He's been retired from Atlantic Richfield for many years, but he still knows everything that goes on behind closed doors. Just yesterday, I spent about a 45-minute conversation with him, and Sean, some of the things he told me, I still sit here utterly amazed because we're seeing so many critical things take place, as you just mentioned a moment ago. So first of all,